Welcome to June's block or ornament. This month we don't have a clever name. It's simply called Iris, which is exactly what you have on the picture here. Our second flower in a row. We did a daffodil last month, so this month we move on to the later blooming irises. Kind of a pretty design, hard to see in the picture here, but as we lay it out, you'll get to see it come together better. That's going to be our primary focus today, is looking at trying to figure out which parts go where. This particular design, no two pieces are alike, but some are very, very similar. So it makes it hard to sort this out and how to figure out what should be laid out where. So let's dump out our pieces and have a look-see at our parts and see what the differences are. Let's start figuring out with the easy ones. So again, if you reference this up here on your picture, because I think that's important with this particular design, because the parts are so similar that it gets difficult to kind of sort them out. So this one here, you see you've got this little dip and those kind of little wrinkles there. This is actually a mirror image of that, which is fine. That is your top center piece. So I'm just going to stick that on here for now so that we know which piece it is. Let's take our stems and our little center thing there and put those off to the side. The other piece that's easy to figure out is this bottom piece here, this little round kind of area. We're going to put that down here at the bottom so we know where that one goes. Notice I overlapped it a little bit here. This design can get tricky with ending up with gaps, so you need to pay attention as you're laying them out so that when you sew your design, you don't end up holes, making your iris look like it's got holes in it. All right, so let's look at the rest of our pieces here and try to figure out what is what. And I think, I think that's a little bit tricky, but if we start kind of decoding this, so this one here is distinctly different from the other ones, and that actually is this piece over here. And you're going to want to take that and tuck it a little bit behind that center piece there. I don't know if you can see that, but I stuck that a little bit behind. Now, what do we think is our other bottom piece? So if we look at these have very similar configurations, whereas this one's kind of different. This is actually your other bottom piece. So we're going to take that and we're going to stick it behind that center. And again, make sure that you don't have gaps there, or else when you iron this on, you're going to end up with a holy iris, which you do not want. Okay, so we've got our bottom in place, and that leaves us with these two parts. And then it gets pretty easy because it's fairly obvious which side they're going on, because you're going to want that point to stick underneath here and the other point to stick underneath. And I actually take and put the bottom pieces on top of the top pieces. And this is going to take a little bit of playing with it to get them lined up correctly. Maybe you want to pull this off for a minute here and get these tucked in, kind of in that configuration. Now that we know what goes where, I'm going to take this and put it in, make sure that I don't have any open spaces showing. Take this bottom piece, put that one on, put it over the edge of the top, and notice we don't have any little gaps. So that's good. We don't want gaps in our iris. We don't want it to be holy. So there's the layout of our top, and then after that, it's much simpler. Your little gold centerpiece goes in this little bottom. That's kind of that little throat on your iris, gives it a little pop of color. And then you can take and put your stem. This is going to need to go underneath here. This is another design that uses the whole circle when you're doing an ornament, so make sure you stick that in there far enough. And then you can take your two leaves, and these are going to follow along. Make sure you have those overlap as well, so one's going to be on the top. And there we have our layout for our iris design. Now, you're going to want to carefully iron this into place so that all of your carefully tucked items don't move around on you. Just take your fabric and put it on top and use your iron there. So that's one of the trickiest parts of this design. So once you've got it laid out and ironed, again, as usual, I have one that I've already started to stitch a little bit. I had to stitch this one in place because it was holy. If you do end up with holes as you're sewing, if you're feeling confident with your sewing, you can actually kind of pull them together as you sew, which is what I kind of had to do here because I didn't carefully overlap my pieces. So even if you have an error, it's fixable. You know, everything is always fixable. We don't have to panic. That's my motto in life. Now, the only other thing I wanted to touch upon is putting in some little markings on the little yellow throat piece of this iris. And if you look at a picture of a purple iris up close, or at least certain kinds of them, you'll see that they have some little speckles on them. And I wanted to give this a little bit of life, so I decided I was going to try to replicate that. And I do that with both black and the off-white thread. So I came here with my 2 strands pre-threaded in my needles to save us a little time here. And you can see these, again, if we look back on the picture, this is what I'm talking about. And all I do here is put some little short stitches in. I don't really follow any kind of pattern. I did make the white ones go down a little bit lower than the black, because if you look at an iris, that's how it seems to be. But again, all we're doing is adding a little bit of character and detail to our design here. So I'm going to start with my white and just... I can see what I'm doing here. Get my needle through so we can see it. So I'm going to come through. Now remember, when we're doing these little stitches, they always end up looking smaller when you're done than you think they're going to. So I'm going to make this bigger than I think I want it to be. You can see I've got a pretty good space between them, and it's going to end up looking like almost a dot rather than a stitch. So there we have one little stitch in there. I'm going to make one off to the side. And then one off to this side. Again, I'm not following any particular pattern. These are mostly just little dots on that iris. Again, so go back and look at, Google a picture of an iris and you'll see what I'm talking about with this little dots that are on there. I also want to get maybe 2 down here further. All right. Get that in. Kind of between. If you want to do something more particular, again, you can always use a picture as a reference and try to replicate that picture. All right, so I've got those in there. I'm going to cut my floss. As per usual for me, I'm not even going to worry about knotting that off. And then I'm going to make fewer little black dots, and I'm going to make those closer to the center. That's how I interpret these pictures to look. Again, subject to your own interpretation. So I'm going to make some little shorter black dots right up near the top. There's one. I'm not overlapping the white. Again, I don't know that it matters even if I did. This one's pretty close. I'm going to go up here. Maybe another one down here. I should also point out that normally you'd be doing this after you had already backstitched around this yellow piece. You would have used your yellow 2 strands of floss to backstitch around that. I hadn't done that here because I'm just, skipping forward to show you, but you'd want to do that, not backstitch, sorry, blanket stitch around there. I don't know, am I happy with those couple? I think I want another dot or 2. Well, maybe this one is going to be enough. You kind of have to look at it and say, does that look balanced? Does that make me happy? I think I'm going to stay with that with the 4 black dots, and I think I had 5 of the white. Again, it's just giving it a little bit of dynamic, trying to capture that, beauty of nature thing, and adding a little bit more design to it. That's purely optional. If you don't want to be bothered with that, you don't need to do it, but as you can see, it doesn't take you an awful long time to do it. The stitching on this is straightforward. In fact, you don't have any back stitching except for those little marks that you did there. You'd want to do your blanket stitch all around your purple pieces. It's a little tricky in some areas. Where you have the overlap, you're only going to back stitch the part that isn't, underneath. So like you'd stitch all around the upper portion with the exception of the bottom where this is going to overlap here. Your lower center, you're going to be able to back stitch all around, but the other petals, you're basically going to be doing that outer edge because the other sides, you can see that I don't have this close enough. So I have to kind of fake that when I sew it. But you'd be doing the outsides here. You don't have to do a second line of stitching on the inside of that. See, I only have that one line here. There's not a lot of purpose of doing a second line, following around where that felt is tucked underneath. And then you can backstitch all around your leaves. So, no, not backstitch, sorry. Well, what's wrong with me today? Blanket stitch around to secure your leaves in place. All right, so that's your pretty little iris for June. Hopefully those will be popping up soon in your yards. If not, have a look online, get the idea of what we were shooting for here. And I'll see you next month with a 4th of July themed block.